The account you are about to encounter is far from simple. For a long time, the world assumed this chapter had already closed. The figures connected to it were identified, proceedings concluded, and attention gradually shifted elsewhere. Yet silence does not always signal that truth has faded away. Consider Ghislaine Maxwell, whose emerging disclosures suggest that certain stories, once thought sealed, may still be unfolding. And then there is one name few imagined would reappear in this context: Meghan Markle. Is she truly positioned within a complex network of influence that was once considered untouchable? This discussion moves through powerful figures, unresolved controversies, and the quiet cost faced by anyone who chooses to step forward, whether they stand on the margins of society or within its highest circles. Share your perspective by leaving a 1 if you feel empathy for Meghan Markle, or a 0 if you see the situation differently. Be sure to like and subscribe to the channel as we continue exploring narratives that are rarely examined, because understanding these unfolding layers may reshape how the entire story is viewed. From within confinement, Ghislaine Maxwell stands without alliances to rely on, no public image left to safeguard, and no future leverage to bargain with. The influence she once held appears to have dissolved, as every layer of protection has quietly fallen away, leaving only the stark presence of accountability. According to reports, instead of choosing absolute silence, she has started to share information carefully measured, indirect, and deliberate rather than dramatic. With little remaining to protect, each statement now carries added weight. And among the names gradually resurfacing in these renewed discussions is one many once assumed would never be questioned again: Meghan Markle. Not in the role of royalty, nor defined by a title, but as a presence from an earlier chapter, one unfamiliar to most observers. It points to a period before public labels, before constant lenses followed every step, before carefully crafted narratives took shape. It was a time when access, proximity, and emerging circles carried more weight than recognition. And when images were captured in that moment, few could have imagined their later significance, as those quiet records would one day carry the potential to illuminate fragments of a past that many would prefer to remain unseen. Previously unseen visuals are beginning to surface once more. Associations that were once brushed aside are now being examined with renewed attention. What had quietly faded from public memory is gradually being documented again. This is not a narrative built on speculation, but a reflection of how unresolved traces rarely disappear entirely. Every controversy reaches a point where influence weakens, where fragments thought to be sealed away slowly re-emerge, not because they are aggressively pursued, but because proof has a way of remaining patient and persistent until it is finally noticed. These visuals, once overlooked and set aside, now reappear like unfinished elements waiting to be aligned into a larger understanding. Each frame is more than a memory. It represents a detail that was restrained by time and circumstance, now gently pulling at a narrative many hoped would remain distant. This is not merely an act of revisiting what has already passed. It is the careful opening of a door long left untouched, where long dormant realities begin to emerge, no longer willing to stay beneath the surface. Not through formal statements or dramatic declarations, but through moments and visuals that quietly return to view. This is a narrative about revelation, about how long-contained truths eventually resist confinement. When such elements resurface, influence begins to fade, and direction can no longer be tightly held. What was once believed to be fully removed gradually finds its place again in the wider account, and the silence that once protected it loses its power to endure. According to multiple accounts, a set of images once quietly set aside has now re-entered public view. They are considered sensitive not because of how they look at first glance, but because of who appears in them, where they were captured, and which surrounding figures were later linked to that setting. For years, These visuals were assumed to be fully removed, absent from archives, no longer circulated, and impossible to recover for official use, yet they have surfaced once again. These are not merely frozen moments from another time. They represent fragments of a narrative that was both forgotten and deliberately kept out of sight. Their return signals more than the recovery of what was once removed. It marks the beginning of a renewed phase in which those connected to the images can no longer rely on concealment. Institutions and systems may have attempted to erase their existence, yet once these visuals re-emerge, they deliver a clear reminder: lasting truths resist permanent disappearance. The images now function not only as records of a single moment, but as indicators of a longer sequence that went unacknowledged. Their resurfacing is not accidental. It reinforces the idea that the past, no matter how carefully suppressed, eventually finds its way back into view. Sources explain it in straightforward terms. Too many individuals were connected, too many intersecting relationships existed, and too many observers were present for a single episode to remain concealed indefinitely. Over time, silence itself becomes a greater risk than acknowledgement. Those linked to the situation understand that reality has a tendency to surface, and the more effort placed on suppressing it, the more visible the fractures in control become. When unexplained links, encounters, and decisions begin drawing notice, they generate questions that quiet avoidance can no longer resolve. A prolonged quiet can create the illusion of safety for those involved. Yet that same quiet often sets the stage for deeper repercussions. This is why, when these images return, they are more than remnants of another era. They serve as signals that some realities resist permanent concealment. What draws attention is not simply that the images exist, but the deliberate attempts made to make them vanish. Gatekeepers of information sought to remove them, distance them from public awareness, and allow time to dissolve their presence. Attempts to remove traces may appear effective for a time, but they often deepen doubt and weaken control in the long run. When realities are pressed out of view for too long, and repeated efforts to contain them fall short, they tend to return with amplified impact. The images and records once set aside, pushed into obscurity, gradually find their way back into focus, becoming inseparable from the wider account. With each re-emergence, it becomes clearer that extended concealment does not strengthen protection. Rather, it lowers the threshold for eventual disclosure. Institutions rarely remove records without a reason. Archives are not quietly restricted unless someone has judged that certain material is better left unseen. That earlier decision, however, no longer holds. These images are no longer confined or obscured. They are resurfacing with clear intent. What they suggest is a placement of Meghan Markle within a particular social setting, one that has been publicly linked to Jeffrey Epstein in broader reporting, defined less by a single place and more by overlapping circles, exclusive gatherings, private travel, and carefully managed access. These images go beyond recording a fleeting instant. They point to relationships and settings that remained out of view for years and are now moving into clearer focus. They are not casual snapshots, but fragments of a larger narrative that some hoped would fade with time, yet can no longer be ignored. Their return does more than revisit what once happened. It invites reflection and prompts questions that can no longer be set aside. What draws attention is not any surface detail within the images, but the links they suggest, the layers of influence and access that were carefully kept out of sight. These visuals now signal the opening of a chapter that can no longer be overlooked, because they function as more than pictures. They gesture toward a past that remained obscured. This is the point where discussion moves beyond assumption toward documented traces. At first glance, an image appears simple: a face, a setting, a single moment. but its context gives it meaning far beyond what is immediately visible. But context transforms meaning entirely. What was once dismissed as uncertain talk, lacking tangible support, is now accompanied by a visible record. According to accounts, these images draw concern because they establish presence not through chance alignment or hearsay, but through documented closeness within a recognized social setting. Such proximity is difficult to frame as accidental. It suggests that interactions, encounters, and circumstances cannot be clarified by statements alone, but must be interpreted through what the images themselves quietly demonstrate. Each image, though frozen in a single instant, carries the weight of a broader narrative in which subtle links have been reinforced over time. Once these visuals enter public view, the discussion moves beyond suggestion or conjecture. They stand as indicators of an interconnected web formed gradually, pointing to associations that cannot easily be dismissed. It is the quiet details within these frames that now prompt questions once left unspoken, and at this stage, they are questions that no longer fade into the background. They establish a sequence of events. They draw lines between individuals who were once kept apart through careful distance and strategic quiet. More than that, they shed light on why silence was maintained. When visuals vanish, it is seldom about embarrassment alone. It is often about accountability. It reflects concern over what such images might trigger others to remember, verify, or eventually voice. Every frame, every concealed moment is linked to a chain of actions, judgments, and outcomes that time can no longer remove. They are more than visual records. They are essential fragments of an extended narrative that certain parties attempted to keep out of view. Once these images return, they function not merely as references, but as confirmation that something real was deliberately restrained. Efforts to conceal did not dissolve that reality. Instead, they reinforced its persistence, demonstrating that what is held back often remains intact, waiting for the moment when it inevitably comes back into sight. Sources indicate that whenever these materials resurface, attempts are made to minimize their impact, shift focus elsewhere, or dilute attention. The approach is not direct resistance, but gradual exhaustion allow interest to fade, curiosity to dull, and questions to lose momentum. The goal is simple: keep the images out of sight long enough for them to seem insignificant. Yet influence does not remain fixed. Time has a way of redistributing it. What was set aside, what was once brushed off, has a tendency to return. Time moves forward relentlessly, and what it carries with it cannot be permanently held back. When quiet lingers and attention drifts, when memory fades and interest wanes, that is often the moment when what was once concealed begins to return. Even if questions remain unresolved and certain materials stay out of view, their renewed presence is not accidental. It signals that reality does not simply vanish. Each time such elements resurface, whether redirected or minimized, details believed to be removed quietly re-enter the frame. This is how truth persists across time, and when it emerges again, it carries a weight that can no longer be dismissed or overlooked. That is why, when these images reappear, they represent far more than remnants of another time. They reflect the outline of a prolonged process kept out of view and of relationships deliberately obscured to prevent wider understanding. Each image belongs to a narrative that was never fully told. And when these traces return, they do more than revisit history, they initiate a turning point for those who once relied on concealment. Attempts to remove them may have worked temporarily, but time reshapes influence, and what is real cannot be kept out of sight indefinitely. When safeguards weaken, when partnerships dissolve, and when silence no longer offers advantage, reality no longer requires persuasion. It only needs visibility. That is what gives these images their significance, not because they pass judgment, but because they invite inquiry. And inquiry is the starting point of every meaningful examination. What was once set aside can no longer be dismissed, because as clarity increases, the motives for keeping things concealed steadily lose their strength. These visuals are more than frozen instances. They serve as active markers of narratives that time failed to erase. Every frame, every subtle element, every figure within them contributes to a broader account that now demands attention. By prompting questions, these images set in motion a path toward understanding, one where obscurity becomes harder to maintain, and those who preferred the shadows find it increasingly difficult to avoid being seen. When these images come back into view, they do more than reconnect the present with a moment long gone. They stand as a reminder that concealment has limits. Beyond revisiting earlier events, they prompt reflection on what continues today, how influence and quiet agreements can transform reality into secrecy. Their return acts as a signal, a subtle indication that understanding is approaching, and once clarity begins to emerge, its momentum is difficult to restrain. To grasp this dynamic, it helps to understand the role of anonymity. Before Meghan Markle became widely recognized, she existed largely outside public focus. According to accounts, during that period she moved within exclusive social spaces without scrutiny, precisely because attention was elsewhere. She was not prominent enough to draw headlines, not influential enough to invite questioning, and not visible enough to be tracked. In environments defined by discretion and limited exposure, that lack of recognition functioned as a form of access rather than a limitation. She blended into the background, unseen and unexamined. Yet that very lack of attention created access to spaces known only to a select few, where influence was shaped quietly and presence mattered more than recognition. When observation is absent, movement becomes easier, and subtle connections can form without resistance. Over time, those quiet links can evolve into pathways toward greater opportunity. Share your perspective in the comments if you believe anonymity can open doors that outsiders rarely notice. Remember to like and subscribe to the channel as we continue uncovering stories that exist beyond noise and headlines, where influence and access are often built through relationships that remain largely invisible. Anonymity is more than the absence of recognition. It functions as a layer of protection, allowing someone to move without scrutiny and step into spaces that would otherwise remain closed. In her earlier years, Meghan was not a public symbol or a headline figure, but simply one individual within refined social settings where her presence raised no questions and drew no notice. Yet from that quiet position, possibilities began to take shape, and as visibility slowly increased, the unspoken chapters of that earlier period shifted from invisibility into something more carefully guarded. And that lack of recognition worked in her favor. In private settings, exclusive receptions, closed-door functions, and invitation-only encounters, those without a public profile could merge seamlessly into the environment. Names were rarely noted, faces passed without scrutiny. Questions about how someone arrived, who extended the invitation, or what arrangements were made simply did not arise. Accounts suggest that during this phase, Meghan Markle moved within circles where closeness mattered more than titles, where connections formed quietly, and where access was shaped through informal presence rather than public standing. In those spaces, being unrecognized served as its own safeguard. That is why her attendance was rarely recorded, why images lacked labels, and why names were left unspoken. When someone is not a figure of note, blending in becomes effortless, and attention naturally shifts elsewhere. In environments shaped by layered relationships and quiet exchanges, invisibility offers security. These meetings, receptions, and private occasions were never intended for public view. They existed to cultivate subtle links, where simply being present mattered, while identity remained deliberately unspoken. Only later, when Meghan Markle married, stepped into royal life, and her name became globally recognized, did earlier chapters begin to carry risk. Anonymity offers protection only while it remains intact. As visibility increases, what once passed unnoticed can no longer remain unseen. Prior associations and quiet connections that drew little attention during obscurity are suddenly examined through a different lens, making discretion far more difficult to maintain. At that stage, the past becomes sensitive not only for the individual at its center, but also for everyone who once moved within that same, unnoticed space. And once a crown enters the picture, every unseen step that came before is drawn into the historical record, whether it is welcomed or not. If anonymity served as the shield, then access still required a passageway. According to accounts, one of the most influential gateways into elite circles during that period was Soho House, a private club presented as relaxed, artistic, and unassuming, while discreetly linking influential figures beyond public view. In 2015, reports suggest that Meghan Markle traveled to Istanbul for the opening of a new Soho House location. At that stage, she had not yet become an internationally recognized figure, nor was she positioned at the top of the industry. She was described as a guest presence, someone who attended functions, participated in social moments, and contributed to the setting. These occasions, however, were far from random. Soho House openings were known as convergence points for investors, insiders from royal-adjacent circles, entertainment figures, and individuals who valued privacy over publicity, where discretion mattered more than recognition. An invitation itself carried weight, functioning almost like a form of exchange. Being present meant gaining entry. What later prompted quiet curiosity, according to accounts, was the scope of the travel involved long-distance journeys, premium seating, and a standard of movement that appeared difficult to reconcile with her professional earnings at that stage. Reports suggest that even peers from her television work privately wondered how such travel arrangements were being supported. No explanations were offered in public, and at the time, none were expected. In those spaces, questions about arrival never mattered, only whether someone fit in. To grasp why the re-emerging images now draw attention, it is necessary to understand what sources describe as the Epstein environment. It was not defined by one residence, one destination, or one location. It functioned as a broader social ecosystem. According to accounts, Meghan Markle was present in New York on multiple occasions during periods when Prince Andrew was also in the city. These periods also coincided with moments when Jeffrey Epstein's schedule was reportedly active, drawing a recurring circle of familiar faces. The significance is not centered on any single overlap, but on recurrence. Presence in one shared setting might be dismissed as chance, yet repeated proximity begins to suggest ease, familiarity, and a level of acceptance within that environment. Accounts indicate that during this time, she navigated spaces where introductions happened quietly and discretion was assumed. These were not venues governed by formal records or public attention, but by unspoken rules and mutual recognition. They operate through quiet understanding. That is why closeness matters, not because it implies guilt, but because it shapes who is able to observe, listen, and become aware. In spaces where influence and discretion coexist, access determines perspective. When someone is allowed inside key settings, they gain exposure to dynamics others never witness. Over time, that access places them within narratives that some would prefer to keep unseen. And in environments later revealed to be harmful or exploitative, opportunity itself becomes significant. It is not only about being present, but about having entry to knowledge, context, and experiences that remain unavailable to most. It is this level of access that creates imbalance, shaping bonds that, once revealed, have the potential to disrupt established structures. The return of these images matters because it shows that closeness is not an abstract idea, but a real mechanism at work. It plays a central role in how influence is formed and sustained. When visuals believed to be removed quietly reappear, they are more than reminders of a past instant. They illustrate how authority and control are often reinforced through proximity itself. Those who hold influence rarely depend on action alone. They secure it through access, by occupying spaces that remain closed to others. When these images re-emerge, they are not simply echoes of history, but reminders that concealment has limits. The focus is on presence itself. At this stage, the narrative broadens not to divert attention, but to bring sharper understanding. According to recently re-examined accounts, Meghan Markle's trajectory followed patterns that were not uncommon. Accounts suggest that similar trajectories appeared elsewhere across Europe. Several women moved through early careers in modeling or creative industries, attended exclusive social functions, formed proximity to influential circles, and later entered royal families through marriage. Two examples are often referenced in discussions of this pattern. One involves Sofia of Sweden, whose name has been loosely associated in reports with overlapping social environments linked to Epstein during the mid-2000s, associations that later faded from public conversation after her marriage into royalty. Another is Marie of Norway, who publicly acknowledged in 2019 that she had once maintained a friendship with Jeffrey Epstein, later expressing regret and citing a lack of judgment at the time. Her earlier years involved associations that later drew controversy, yet those details received far less attention after she became part of royal life. The significance of these examples lies not in passing judgment, but in recognizing a recurring structure. According to accounts, Epstein's approach was not random or impulsive. He operated with intention, placing individuals within carefully selected environments where opportunity and upward movement were possible, and where previous chapters could gradually fade from view once a certain level of status and protection was reached. Viewed this way, the reappearing images no longer stand alone. They fit into a broader structure where anonymity, access, and progression overlap. Once such a pattern is visible, it becomes difficult to dismiss. As the narrative reaches this stage, the sequence of events gains clarity. According to accounts, February 2016 draws attention for a specific reason. It surfaces within two separate narratives that, under normal circumstances, would never align. On one side, it marks the period when Meghan Markle later stated she first encountered Prince Harry. On the other side, accounts suggest that this same window aligns with what has been described as a Yacht Week, a series of invitation-only journeys involving affluent patrons, creatives, and social acquaintances. These were not conventional voyages meant for leisure alone. They functioned as mobile social settings, structured around privacy, discretion, and carefully managed entry. Personal devices were limited, media access was excluded, and participant details were rarely documented, allowing interactions to unfold beyond public visibility. Sources indicate that Meghan Markle may have been present during one such yacht gathering in that time frame. The point here is not to assign blame or make claims, but to note the overlap. When two narratives emerge within the same period, one publicly shared, the other largely private, it naturally invites closer attention. Not because explanations are being demanded, but because once a sequence of events is outlined, it becomes difficult to reshape. In discussions involving influence and access, timing often carries particular weight. Up to this moment, the account remains centered within social contexts rather than conclusions. The complication now shifts toward legal considerations. According to discussions referenced in court-adjacent reporting, the possibility has been raised that Virginia Giuffre, a central figure in the broader Epstein litigation, may seek testimony from Meghan Markle in connection with a civil case involving Prince Andrew. This is framed not as a symbolic move, but as a procedural option. Three practical factors are often cited. First, Meghan Markle is based in the United States, a detail that could place her within the court's potential reach if such a request were ever formally pursued. Second, she has been described in various discussions as having moved within Prince Andrew's broader social orbit for a period of time. Third, and most relevant from a procedural standpoint, she is believed to have been present within social settings linked to Jeffrey Epstein. In legal terms, presence does not imply responsibility. It defines who may have observed, overheard, or gained contextual awareness of events that unfolded beyond public view. Witnesses are not defendants. They are individuals whose proximity places them in the frame of inquiry. Ultimately, no testimony was requested. Yet the appearance of her name alone shifted the conversation, altering how the situation was publicly interpreted and understood. At that point, the narrative moved beyond social intrigue and into a legal context. Silence can endure for a long time, but it rarely remains unbroken indefinitely. According to accounts, as legal pressure intensified and confinement became a reality, Ghislaine Maxwell began signaling a shift in stance not through public announcements, but through carefully framed remarks suggesting cooperation, disclosure, and frustration toward those no longer facing consequences. Her statements referenced wider spheres such as entertainment, fashion, and elite networks, including past social overlaps that had drawn attention to figures like Meghan Markle. At the same time, another shift was noticed, quietly and without announcement. Image collections appeared to change. Certain visuals became harder to find. Usage limitations surfaced without clear explanation. According to circulating claims, access to some previously available photographs connected to Meghan Markle was reduced or restricted. Observers were not offered formal clarification. To some, it gave the impression that visual records were being reassessed, as if organizations were taking steps to prevent older material from being re-examined through a different lens. Yet attempts to remove records often attract more attention than resolution itself. When systems choose concealment over clarity, they unintentionally signal that the material still holds significance. By that stage, enough observers were aware of what had once been visible that collective memory could not be undone. For years, the narrative appeared stable because it was carefully managed. Visual traces faded, names drifted apart, and timelines were compressed. What could not be directly challenged was layered beneath uncertainty, remaining out of reach until the structures that protected it began to weaken. This account is not about exposing one isolated incident. It reflects a gradual process, a system where low visibility becomes a gateway to information, where access leads to advancement, and advancement then seeks to reshape earlier chapters. Yet documentation has endurance. Visual records remain, memories persist, and silence holds only until it loses its value to those maintaining it. The return of these images does not resolve the narrative, it activates it again, not through noise or drama, but through something far more unsettling for established structures: context. So the narrative surrounding Meghan Markle does not conclude with the version currently visible. Once context is brought back into focus, control over the storyline weakens, and what once existed beyond notice becomes impossible to overlook. This is not a conclusion, but a turning point, the moment when revision is no longer possible. With perspective restored, long obscured elements surface, and what remained concealed for so long can no longer retreat into silence. Meghan's journey, shaped by layers of unanswered questions and evolving perspectives, continues to develop in ways that invite attention. Whether these threads will resurface again or quietly fade remains open to interpretation. Share your view by leaving a 1 if you believe this story still holds the power to spark further discussion, or a 0 if you think it will remain unresolved. Remember to like, share the video, and subscribe to the channel so you can stay connected as new insights and overlooked details continue to emerge.